if I could have a conversation with 17-year-old Kasey, I would tell her to keep pushing, set boundaries, and love yourself.
In what areas of your life did you find it most difficult to love yourself? Like, what made that difficult at that time?
I think I was looking for love in all the wrong places. So for me, I was very like quick to want to talk to a boy or very quick to like seek out likeness in that aspect. Even with friendships, I think at 17, I was like just very, I was fed up with how people was treating me, but then at the same time, I was just like, but I want everybody to like me because I knew I had a personality that was like energy driven, and I knew that people could like me. I just feel like they didn't give me a chance because they thought that I was like lame or that I wasn't pretty enough or funny enough or I just didn't fit in with like the popular girls. But then I started getting attention elsewhere from like men, and I feel like that put me in a comfort zone to be like, okay, I can get used to this. But then eventually that mindset changed because I was like, I'm getting nothing out of this. Like with friendships or in a relationship aspect, I wasn't getting anything. So then at that point, I started getting fed up, frustrated with myself, angry, resentment with myself, bitterness, where I was like, okay, nothing is working. Friendships, relationships. And at that point, I started questioning like who I am and what my purpose was at that point. Like, what was I meant to do on this earth, you know?
So, in your different environments, like at home, school, church, and your community, what type of examples did you have around you when it came to what self love looks like, even if they were bad?
Oh, that's crazy. Um, I don't think I had a lot of good examples of what self love looked like. I grew up in a family where a lot of people, a lot of my family members were coupled up. Like there was a lot of marriages, a lot of relationships, but almost all of them failed, if not the only time or multiple times. And of course, this is like no dig at my family or anything like that, but I grew up not seeing a healthy environment of self love, like independent love, and relationship or marital love. Like I grew up seeing my parents get divorced when I was 12, but they started like that process when I was about 9. So I watched all the arguments, I watched all the fights, I watched all of the toxicity happen, and I watched their marriage crumble. But then I would see certain family members whose marriages would end in divorce. Certain other family members, like cousins and stuff, just be out and about, like doing stuff how they wanted to do it, knowing that they weren't raised in a certain way. And I wasn't seeing healthy relationships. I had one cousin who was in like a long term relationship, and I had knew his girlfriend, and me and my sister had loved her a lot, and we finally got used to her, and then they broke up. So once I kind of saw that happen, I was like, nobody like understands love in my family. Nobody loves themselves. Nobody, even when people would like break up, it's almost I would watch a lot of depression happen. I wasn't watching a lot of, okay, now let me go through a healing process. Now let me figure out how to close this chapter for good. There were still things happening where the two parties were fighting with each other all the time. They would fight over custody this and alimony that, and I need the house this, and I need the car that, and I need money for this, and why you still, you know what I'm saying? Like it was just a lot of negativity. And I think for me, that put me in a negative mind space about looking forward to being in a relationship because seeing all of that happen at a young age and continue to go on throughout your life, it just put me in a mindset of like, I want this, but one, I don't feel like I'm deserving or worthy, and two, is my journey going to be like this? Because I don't at that time, and I even still kind of feel like I don't even know how to really love somebody because I never seen like positive love. You know what I mean? And so I think for me, just seeing as many relationships crumble, that just put me in a whole different perspective about how to move forward in relationships. I also saw a lot of family members who didn't have a lot of positive friendships with people. There weren't too many people that they hung out with, or if they did have friends from like high school or coworkers that they were close with, a lot of things would happen where it was like, why don't you have friends? And a lot of the responses was like, well, I'm just a person, I'm not a people person. And it's like, but you are, so why don't you have friends? Yeah.
So, in the midst of what you were seeing in your family, did anybody who was older than you, like your elders or your parents, did anybody ever have those conversations that where they would at least try to teach you about love, even if they weren't demonstrating it correctly? Like, did anybody talk to you about how to love on yourself and then how to receive love from other people?
Yes. My grandmothers were really influential in that aspect. Um, but it was surprising because both of them were separated. Like from the time I was old enough to remember them and know who they were never in a relationship from what I've seen. I'm 28. So all 28 years of my life, I've never seen them in a relationship. So I think with my mom's mom, I think her and my granddad had got divorced because he married somebody else way before I was born. And then with my dad's mom, my nana, she and my grandfather, I believe, were separate. I don't think they got divorced. I think they were just separated at one point in time. Um, but they would always tell me like to love myself first and foremost, like love God, love yourself, and get to know yourself, and then start to prepare yourself to love somebody else and receive love. My parents also did a good job at like showing love and making sure that myself and my siblings knew we were loved. And my family on both sides shows and have shown a lot of love, but I don't think it was in a point of like, let me sit you down and tell you about love. I do remember a lot of comments of almost insinuating like learn from my mistakes, if that makes sense. Like don't do what I did. And some hearing that when you were a kid, it's like, well, did you never love mama? Did you never love daddy? Did you never love my uncle or my auntie or my cousin? Like, but then when you get older, it's like you realize that that's not what they're saying. It's just like maybe they got together too young. Maybe they married too early. Maybe they start having kids too early. Maybe they weren't mentally or spiritually prepared for this type of union and they moved too fast. And now they're getting to a state of mind where it's like we've outgrown each other. Not because we hate each other, we don't love each other. It's just we move too fast. But then at that point, since they did things so young, it's hard to tell somebody who's approaching that age where they started or older how to love because they weren't even in a position where they love themselves to love somebody else. It was just more so like forced, like they put themselves in that situation. And one thing my nana would always tell me um, was never let a man tell you that he doesn't want you more than once. And I think I made that mistake a lot of times because I didn't realize that there's different ways to have that told to you or at least shown to you. It's like never let a man tell you more than once he doesn't want you, but it's like, okay, he didn't physically tell me that, but he's also not showing it, which is where rejection comes in. You're not communicating, you're not responsive to text messages, you're not interacting with me, you're not putting forth the effort to like court me, take me out, do things like that. And I remember it was times where I would like overly push myself to be seen by certain men. even recently, and like both of my grandmothers, have passed on now, but I remember the most recent situation where I liked somebody and I found myself backtracking into old habits and ways. I just remember sitting there, like thinking about what my nana would say, like, "No, you better than that. Like, don't ever play yourself because you're beautiful, you're strong, like you're better than what you're trying to present to somebody. If they can't see it already and off rip, then that's not the person for you. And never try to like force yourself or change yourself for anyone to like you or to even love you. Because if that's somebody who wants to be in your space and love you, they'll do what it takes to do it. So I definitely had a lot of hidden gems through my family and like those conversations, but I think a lot of it came from a place of hurt where it came off as like, don't do what I did, as opposed to this is what happened to me, but I don't want this to be a reflection or a thought of how it'll be for you.
That makes sense. Going back to what you mentioned about your family member saying, basically, learn from my mistakes. Don't do what I've done.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine that to them, it would seem like, oh, by saying this, I'm giving her some things that she can internalize and then apply to her life.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes telling somebody what not to do, it doesn't automatically translate into here are some things you can do
Right.
to not make this mistake. And so, are there any dysfunctional habits you feel you might have mirrored at that point in your life, like at 17? Like, are there any things you feel like you might have done that you've seen your other family members fall into when you were 17 years old?
As far as like relationships,
Yeah, like friendships and like romantic.
um, I think just falling into the needing to be seen aspect. Um, I think a lot of women in my family, I have a lot of strong women in my family on both sides. But I do think that sometimes their resentment that they might have could have possibly turned into bitterness. And then it comes off overly prideful. It's almost like, yeah, you can hear them say, I'm single, I'm independent, I don't need a man, I got this. But it's not coming from a place of pure confidence. It's coming from a place of hurt. And I think that's where that's one of the traits I fell into was like, it was almost one of the things like, okay, well, if a man don't want me, I'm gonna let him see me. Okay, he see you regardless. So why do you feel like you have to be extra in order for them to see you? Or it was always from certain family members, the typical, the easiest way to get over one man is to get under a new one or to get a new one. How I'm gonna get another man if I ain't got this one? Like, it took me a long time to like this person and muster up the courage to tell him I like them. And now that he rejected me, you think I'm supposed to go outside in 5 minutes and just go up to the gas station and be like, hey, you, like me right now? Like, I don't know where that phrase came from. I feel like that's a very old school, like very traditional statement. But then I also like I'm curious as to where the statement actually came from, because if you think about like old school ways, it was just one of the things like if a man likes you and he tolerates you, be with him. So like a lot of people's grandmothers and great grandmothers and other older family members, they're that generation that was like, I'm gonna put up with a man regardless of what he does and says to me. He can beat on me, he could cheat on me, he could take all my money, but as long as he coming back home and as long as there's something on his finger, I'm cool. Whole time you damaged, broken, bitter, angry, depressed, stressed out, your hair falling out, you gaining weight, losing weight, you sick. But it's like, I got a man. So that's all that matters. I don't care what Cecil and Betty Earl talking about. I got me a man, but your man is cheating on you. Like he went to the store to get some milk and then come back. He got 7 families rolling around here that you don't know about, and I'm not saying that happened in my family, but it's like those are the old school ways that I think a lot of women like in our generation are used to hearing. Like you have that one generation that's very old school, very uniform, where it's like never let nobody see you sweat. What goes on at home stays at home. So I was very raised on that. And I've seen that happen within marriages, within my family, where it's like I would see the abuse, whether it's verbal, physical, whatever. I would know certain things that was going on, whether I needed to hear it or not. And in my head, it would just be like, why are they tolerating this? But then I will also hear conversations if like one of my cousins pissed my auntie off. They don't need to be talking about me anyway because they can't even get a man. I got a man. I'm keeping him. Yeah, but are you happy? And that wasn't even me saying it in a mean way. I genuinely love my family, and so I'm almost overprotective over them. So it'll be like, but you was just on the phone with my mama crying, but now 2 days later is, but you don't even have a man. But 2 days prior, you was crying about your man. You know what I'm saying? And it's not even in a way where it's negative. It's just like, but you weren't okay 2 days ago. But just because this person said something that rubbed you the wrong way, now your response is, but I have. But it's like, yeah, you have him, but does he have you? Is he cherishing you? Is he loving you? And I think for me, just seeing that happen to them as a woman, it was like I don't like seeing women, or at that time when I was younger, I didn't like seeing the women of my family hurt and angry and bitter. And so it just put me in a mindset of like, do I get with a man because he likes me and put up with whatever because I've been told that? Do I get with a man and set boundaries and break up with him for the sake of my peace of mind? And if I do that, is the next step to overly show that I'm at peace when I'm really hurt?
Something you mentioned about something you mentioned about generational things, just how women before us, whether in our family or even if it was women we saw in a community or something,
Mm-hmm.
them exhibiting certain behaviors that you can see being mirrored in our current generation. And that is absolutely something that I believe women internally know is not right. Like they
Mm-hmm.
know something in them knows that this isn't something I should be living through
Mm-hmm.
and experiencing and accepting, but they still do.
Yeah.
So, kind of connecting this to what you mentioned before about wanting, those friendships and those relationships. Um, do you feel like internally there was like this kind of conflict where on one end you wanted these relationships because you felt like you were worthy of them, but on the other side you also felt like you weren't, and so then you would kind of like tolerate certain things, or like you said, like try to be seen and things like that. Like, do you think like that was a reflection of some type of internal war that you had? Like, yeah, I want this, but something in me, I don't feel like I deserve it, or I kind of do, or whatever it is. Like,
Yeah, for sure. I think in the terms of like friendships, I think I was always so determined to prove that I was a good person, even though I know that I've shown it. I think in my head during times of conflict, I was just so like, but I'm worthy of somebody liking me and somebody saying that they're my friend and not the other way around. I think I was just overly like thirsty to be liked, as opposed to realizing that that person is not meant for me. It's not meant for me to be a part of that circle, of that friend group. Of It's not meant for this myself and this person to collide and be friends. Um, and I think in terms of like relationships, I feel like it was just, I don't know. I feel like I just like, I had so much urgency. I don't know what it was. I think I was just very urgent and eager to just say that I had somebody because I never had the opportunity to have somebody. And I think that shifted for me. Well, at least I thought it shifted for me within the last like 2, 3 years. I thought like, okay, well, it's not working out. So let me just focus on me. But then in between me like having my spiritual, going on my spiritual journey and just changing and evolving, I found myself going back to old ways. But then going back to the old ways, I felt like, well, now that I'm older and more mature, I can approach it differently. I would approach it differently, but still get the same result. Because now at that point, I'm not being my authentic self. I'm overdoing it just for this guy to notice me. Or I'm overdoing it just for this person to be like, damn, she dope. But it's like I'm dope regardless, whether you recognize it or not. And then I remember I had to have like a very hard conversation with myself, like, why do you keep pushing yourself or putting yourself in these positions to like feel the need to be validated, to be seen, to be heard, to be noticed? It's like people are going to notice you in general. People are going to talk about you in general. I think in terms of friendships and relationships, I was so determined to be seen as somebody that was so kind and nice and had a good heart and was deserving and worthy of it, and push myself for them to see that they needed me, to the point where I was losing myself. And I started hating myself because I'm like, Kasey, you need yourself in order to continue to push every day, yet you're putting all of your energy into people that don't deserve it. This girl has shown you plenty of times that she's not your friend. This, you've been there for this person in ABC XYZ capacity, yet you don't call them one time and all of a sudden you fake. You this, you that. I'm questioning our friendship. How? I show up for you 24/7. You don't show up for me once. Or if you do show up for me, you're late. Or you make it about you. Or it's just not authentic. It feels like I'm overly forcing myself to be a part of this friendship. I'm overdoing my part as a person. And then as far as like relationships, it's like, why am I trying to prove to this man that I'm worthy of love when he's not even proving to me that I should be knowing his name? Yeah, you probably educated, you probably got a degree, you probably got an apartment, you probably got a nice car, you probably come from a very well-off family, but you probably a butthole. You're probably very arrogant, you probably very self-centered, you probably a know-it-all. Your personality probably won't even clash with mine, but just because you cute and it's like, oh, he probably got a little body. Now in my head it's like, oop, I like him. Now I'm gonna overdo it so he can see me. Whole time he don't even think about you. And that's the harsh reality. Like, you spending your time, even recently for me, spending your time thinking about this person, trying to be nice, and not even trying because I am a nice person, but just checking in on them, making sure they doing okay, making sure they ate, making sure they breathing okay. How did you sleep? Oh my God, how's your friend doing? How's your mom doing? How was your weekend? Yet they wouldn't say boo if somebody threw a football in my head. They wouldn't say boo if I end up going to the emergency room because they don't care. Like, I could be looking super, super good. You might flirt with me, but in the end, you see somebody else or you get a text message from somebody you've been screwing on. Now all of a sudden, I don't want to do it. Or why am I still overdoing my part to be seen by somebody who's told me one thing but did another? You told me you weren't ready for a relationship. You don't mix business with pleasure. And this is happening in multiple situations, yet you doing stuff that you said you weren't gonna do. You may or may not know that I know about it, but Now it's like, now what? And then you start treating me funny. You cut me off. You don't talk to me. A baby come out the woodworks. Where did the baby come from? Where did the baby come from? Whose baby is this? Like, I wasn't ready for a relationship. 2 months later, you at a baby shower with your hand on the stomach with a Burberry shirt on and some buffs with some all white Air Forces with some ripped jeans, talking about welcoming my baby boy. Hello? I brought the city out to do what? Like, I just think like is I've done so much, so many embarrassing things. And I've had to come to that realization recently where it was like, Kasey, you have embarrassed yourself several times. And at that point, when you realize it, you just have no choice but to really kind of live with it and learn from it and then move forward in a more positive way. Because, like, I can't go back and change time. Like, okay, maybe I might have been a little too flirty even after rejection, but I already been there and done that. What am I going to do to move forward? I can't just let that bring me down. But I just think a lot of things that I've seen, I try not to use it as like an excuse as to make that be how I am or makes me who I am, but it's like that's all I know. That's all I know.
So, in your opinion, to redeem yourself, because we do know that going backwards is not that's not possible. Mm-hmm. Like undoing the past is impossible. But in your opinion, because you say you've been on a spiritual journey, you're eons away from 17-year-old Kasey. Like you've changed, and you're still changing. So for you, what does redeeming yourself look like spiritually and practically, like in your everyday life? So that way you will continue to, in a way, like not necessarily undoing what's been done, but at least coming away from like those habits.
Um. Oh, that's a loaded question. Now I'm getting emotional. I think everyday wise, like just building up like the courage to look myself in the mirror every day and be like, you're beautiful, you're loved, you're worthy, you're important, you're here for a reason. And really believing that. Um, and just pushing myself to just continue to be myself, whether people want to accept me for who I am or if they want to not like accept me. But also being able to understand and recognize when boundaries should be set and recognize when someone is trying to play with my kindness. Because I think I've had a lot of experiences where in friendships and intimate relationships or aspects of my life where they would try to use me as like a string, as if I'm like a puppet or whatever. And it's like they'll show me one thing, and then when they feel like they have me reeled in at a certain point, it's like now they push back. They don't want to talk to me. They want to be distant. They want to act weird and funny. And then the only person who's addressing it is me when I didn't do anything wrong. So I think just being in that position now to get comfortable with letting people just letting them go. Like, we too old to be doing the back and forth. You didn't call me for 3 days, so now I'm gonna cut you off for 3 months. But why do I? First of all, why didn't you say nothing? One, if you felt that way. Two, you're cutting me off for 3 months because I didn't call you for 3 days. Yet the only time we talk is when I call you or when I text you. You know what I mean? Um, and I feel like spiritually, I think just just being like putting myself in a position where I'm allowing God to allow me to see myself the way he sees me and how he created me to be. Because I know that I'm not what I've been through, but I also know that God has made me to be a stronger soldier than what I know. Um, but I feel like even in this moment right now, I don't 100% see that or feel that because there is still a lot of like hurt feelings from being rejected and hurt feelings from people playing with my emotions and my kindness and my heart. A lot of hurt emotions from friendships ending or distancing. There's just a lot of pain that I feel like I haven't dealt with, but I'm starting my healing journey where I'm actually really serious. Like, okay, I have to get over these hurdles in order to get to this certain point in my life where I could just not care. Like, that's the point where I feel like I want to get to. Like, the point where I just don't care. Like, if something was to happen and a guy was to reject me, it'll be like, okay, on to the next. But not even in the sense of because somebody reject you, get a new man, like get under somebody new. It's just the fact of, okay, that's his loss. Not to the point where, oh, okay, he rejected me today, but tomorrow I'm gonna wear something to make him really see me. Girl, what's wrong with you? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, you don't have to. That's not necessary to do that. Um, and I think that's what I'm realizing for myself. Is like I don't have to do that. Like, it's okay to be rejected. It's okay for friendships to end or to separate for a season or for however long it's supposed to be. Because in the end, like my peace of mind and my happiness is what's most important, not trying to overdo myself for somebody else's benefit who won't even look my way twice if something happened or if somebody was to start talking to me or a new friendship was to come along, they wouldn't look twice to try to come back, you know. um so I think just essentially getting in the mindset and preparing myself to 100% love myself and to 100% just be who God has created Kasey to be. And just letting go of all the negativity, all of the hurt, all of the anger, just saying like, all right, this is it. I let it go. I'm healed. What's next to make me better?
So obviously, it took actual work to get to this point where you could even draw these kinds of conclusions. Like, because as young people, especially during our teens, there are moments where we just let things fall off of our shoulders. Then we had moments where we suppress things, and then it festers, and then now we're angry and spiteful and all of that. So clearly, you've gone through a lot of changes, and it's clear as day that God has a major or has played a major role in this.
Yeah.
Do you feel that it would have been possible to get to this point? Like thinking from your 17-year-old perspective,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like it would have been possible to get to this point of having more peace, of even wanting to be more secure? Mm-hmm. Do you think any of it would have been possible without
God? Mm-mm. I feel like if I didn't have, because I went through a lot of, not a lot, but I went through some major losses um, in my life. So I felt like at that point, that was when I needed God the most. And I feel like if I didn't have God or if I didn't seek Him out, even in those ways, at those points in my life, um, I feel like I would have probably lost my mind. I don't really know how else to really say that. I feel like I truly I should have been somebody's mama at this point. With how not really careless, but how careless I was at one point in time. Not really caring what people thought, not really caring how the outcomes would be or consequences and stuff. I should have been somebody's mama. I probably should have been dead at this point. Because I had found myself at one point possibly falling into a very interesting trap. Um, or I could have been in jail somewhere because I would have lost my mind being crazy over a dude. And then when I look back at it, it's like God saved me. The knowledge that I did have from my parents pushed me. But then also, I look at where they are compared to where I am. And there's nothing wrong with them, but it's just like, wow, this person has 2, 3 kids. Didn't do anything with their lives. And I was crying over this person. For what? Like, I mean, at the time, it's a big deal when it's happening. But in reality, when you look at the record and you know reflect on the past, it's like that was all God. Like God was sparing me, God was protecting me. He had favor over me, and God was guiding me. Even when I felt like I was at my worst, God was still like, "No, that ain't it. I got something better for you." I don't know what it is yet, but I'm very believing in like the fact that God has something better for me. Um, no matter if it's like different types of friendships. I've never experienced love, never experienced a relationship, never experienced like the dating world. I don't know what that's like. I have my doubts and fears about that in general. But even down to my most recent like liking of somebody and me having to realize that I was overdoing it. I still realized that that was God saying like, "No, I got something for you. Just let that slide." Like it's coming. Something greater is coming because I feel like I've been patient and I've been putting in the work and I've been being obedient to his word, whether it was hurtful or not, because God be talking to me in dreams. That's the way I feel like God communicates with me. And I have a lot of bad dreams. I have a lot of dreams that are very like significant spiritually. And a lot of times when I look it up or if I pray about it and then get an answer, it's not what I want to see or hear. But when time passes on and I think back upon it, it's like, okay, I needed to see that. I needed to have this dream. I needed to see what this outcome could look like in this specific setting. And I would rather have it in a dream than it be reality. I mean, honestly. Um, so yeah, I don't know.
So ultimately, do you think 17-year-old Kasey will be proud of where you are now?
Oh, for sure. 17-year-old me will be proud. Ooh, I think she'll be proud of like the strength that I've like developed. I think she'll be proud of um like the accolades that I have, like all the things I've accomplished. I think she'll be happy at the dreams that I have and that I'm like pursuing to achieve. And I think she'll be happy with the spiritual decision to be abstinent in order to find my true authentic self and love her. Because at that age, she didn't care. And like she knew she wanted to be great, she just didn't know how she was going to get there. I feel like she'll definitely be, she won't be happy about the trials and tribulations I had to go through. Because it wasn't it wasn't easy getting here. I've had to really work hard to really get to where I'm at now. Even though sometimes I still feel like I'm not as accomplished as I would want to be at this age, but then I think back like 11 years ago, I would have never thought I would be here. Um, but then 11 years from now, I could be soaring the world. I just don't know. But all I know is like she would be proud of my spiritual journey, my educational journey, and my personal journey. Yeah, she would definitely be proud. She would probably be under a table somewhere crying, like I am now. But she would be beyond proud.
So if you could leave, let's say your audience is full of young black girls
Mm-hmm.
between 15 and 18 years old who are struggling with self love or struggling with rejection,
Mm-hmm.
struggling with unforgiveness or bitterness or whatever it may be, what kind of advice would you leave?
Um, no matter what happens, no matter how many no's you get, no matter how much rejection comes, no matter how many relationships, partnerships, friendships um, separate, always remember who you are and always continue to be true to yourself through God and always seek God out to remind you of who you are and how you should love yourself because He is the ultimate person that is going to love you no matter what. So always just be very open to God showing you the way, showing you who you are, and believe what it is that you feel about yourself. Also, don't fall into the trap of needing to overdo, or don't fall into the trap of needing to feel like you have to overdo things or be someone that you're not in order to get attention because that validation and attention is not needed. Um, and also just remember to smile, remember to tell yourself and affirm within yourself that you are strong, you are beautiful, you are worthy, and continue to just hold yourself to your own highest standard.
Thank you so much, Kasey.
Thank you.
Don't play with it, don't be dishonest. Ay.